I was 7,000 miles away, cleaning the sand out of my rifle in a pitch-black tent, when my satellite phone vibrated. We were on strict blackout protocols. No calls, no signals. But when I saw the name Tessa flash on the screen, a cold spike of fear punched through my gut. I answered. I didn't hear a hello. I heard a scream that sounded like an animal dying. Then came the shots. Bang. Pause. Bang. It wasn't a gunfight. It was an execution. And then, I heard the clinking of silverware. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. I froze. The air in the tent was hot and stale, smelling of gun oil and sweat, but I felt ice cold. My hand gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. Tessa. I whispered, my voice breaking. Tessa, talk to me. There was no answer from my sister. Just a wet, gurgling sound. A sound I had heard too many times on the battlefield. It was the sound of lungs filling up with blood. I checked the time. It was 7 p.m. back home in Oregon. Dinner time. Please, she whimpered. It was barely a breath. Victor, please. Then I heard him. Victor. My sister's father-in-law. The man who had sworn to protect her after her husband, his own son, died in a car wreck last year. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't shouting. It was terrifyingly calm. You're making a mess on the carpet, Tessa, Victor said. His voice was crystal clear over the satellite connection. Bang. Another shot. I flinched as if the bullet had hit me. Stop. I screamed into the phone, forgetting where I was, forgetting the sleeping Marines around me. Victor, I swear to God, I will kill you. Don't you touch her. He couldn't hear me. Or maybe he just didn't care. I counted the shots. 4, 5, 6. He was taking his time. He was enjoying it. Mom, pass the salt, would you? That was the line that broke my brain. It wasn't Victor. It was Colin, Victor's youngest son. My sister was lying on the floor, being riddled with bullets, and her brother-in-law was asking for the damn salt. I heard the distinct, high-pitched clink of a fork hitting a porcelain plate. Scrape. Clink. They were eating. They were literally eating dinner. 11, Victor said softly. Bang. The gurgling sound stopped. The line went silent, except for the background noise of a family meal. I heard liquid pouring into a glass. I heard Eliza, my mother-in-law, sigh with contentment. The roast is perfect tonight, honey, Eliza said. Though it's a shame about the rug. We'll have to replace it before the estate sale. We'll just say it was a home invasion, Victor replied, his mouth sounding full of food. Finish your potatoes, Colin. We have a long night ahead of us. The call ended. I sat there in the dark, the dead phone pressed against my ear. My entire world had just collapsed. My little sister. The girl who used to cry when she stepped on a bug. The widow who had stayed with those monsters because she didn't want to be alone. She was gone, and they were eating potatoes over her dead body. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. A strange, dark calm washed over me. It's a feeling every SEAL knows. It's the switch you flip when you stop being a human being and start being a weapon. I stood up and walked out of the tent. My commanding officer, Lieutenant Bradley, was standing by the comms truck. He saw my face and took a step back. I must have looked like a demon. Hunter, he asked, stepping forward. What is it? You look like you've seen a ghost. I need a flight, I said. My voice sounded metallic, like it was coming from a machine. Tonight. Right now. You know I can't do that, Sergeant. We are mid-op. You can't just leave. I walked up to him until we were nose to nose. I had 10 years of service. 3 medals for valor. I had never disobeyed an order. But tonight, the Navy didn't own me. My sister is dead, I said. Her in-laws killed her. And right now, they are eating dessert. The lieutenant stared at me. He saw the look in my eyes. He knew that if he tried to stop me, he would have to shoot me. Get on the supply bird, he whispered, looking away. It leaves in 20 minutes. I'll mark it as a family emergency. But Hunter, don't do anything that puts you in prison. I grabbed my bag. I didn't take my military rifle, but I packed my knife. And I packed the entrenching tool, the folding steel shovel we used for digging foxholes. I'm not going to prison, sir, I said, walking toward the chopper. the dust swirling around my boots. I'm going to a funeral. The flight back to the States took 18 hours. I didn't sleep for a single second. I just stared at the back of the seat in front of me, replaying that sound in my head. Clink, scrape, bang. By the time the wheels touched down on American soil, the tears were gone. My grief had hardened into something heavy and cold in my chest. I rented a truck at the airport. I didn't go to the police station. I didn't go to the sheriff. I knew a guy like Victor, rich, powerful, connected. He would have the local cops in his pocket. If I went to the police, they would stall me. They would hide evidence. They would protect their own. No, this wasn't a police matter. This was family business. I drove straight to the estate. It was a massive house on a hill, surrounded by iron gates. It looked peaceful. The windows were glowing with warm, yellow light. I parked the truck down the road and walked up the driveway in the rain. I could see them through the front window. Victor, Eliza, and Colin. They were sitting in the living room, watching TV. Victor was laughing at something on the screen. He looked so comfortable, so alive. I stood in the darkness, rain dripping off my nose, watching the man who murdered my sister laugh. I touched the handle of the shovel in my bag. They thought the problem was solved. They thought Tessa was just a loose end they had tied up. They didn't know I was watching. They didn't know that the home invasion story they invented was about to become very, very real. I wasn't going to knock on the door. I walked around to the back of the house, where the kitchen was. I peered through the glass. The dining table was wiped clean, but on the expensive Persian rug, right near the head of the table, I saw it. A faint, wet stain. Pinkish red. They had tried to scrub it out, but they missed a spot. That was Tessa's blood. I placed my hand on the cold glass of the window. "Enjoy your meal, Victor," I whispered, "because it's the last one you're ever going to eat." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a pair of wire cutters. I looked at the power line running into the house. It was time to turn out the lights. I stood in the rain, the wire cutters heavy in my hand, staring at the power line. One snip, and the house would go dark. I could breach through the back door, neutralize Colin in the kitchen, and have Victor in a chokehold before he even dropped his fork. It would be easy. It would be efficient, but it would be too fast. If I killed them now, they would die thinking they were victims of a random attack. They wouldn't know why. They wouldn't feel the fear Tessa felt. And more importantly, I needed to see it. I needed to look into their eyes and see if they could lie to my face. I needed to witness the monster hiding behind the mask of a grieving father-in-law. I put the cutters back in my pocket. I wiped the rain from my face, took a deep breath to steady the shaking in my hands, and walked around to the front door. I rang the doorbell. The chime echoed inside, a cheerful, melodious sound that felt sickeningly out of place. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. The door swung open. Victor stood there. He was wearing a cashmere sweater and holding a glass of scotch. He looked like the picture of a dignified, wealthy man mourning a tragedy. When he saw me, his eyes widened just a fraction, a flicker of genuine surprise, before the mask slammed back into place. "Hunter," he gasped, stepping back. "Oh my God. We didn't know you were in the country." "I took the first flight," I said. My voice was raspy. I didn't offer a hand to shake. I just stepped past him into the foyer. The house was warm, too warm, and it smelled wrong. Beneath the scent of expensive potpourri and old wood, there was a sharp, chemical sting. Bleach. Fresh, industrial-strength bleach. They had scrubbed the house within an inch of its life. Come in, Victor said, closing the door behind me. "Eliza, Colin, Hunter is here." I walked into the living room. It was like walking onto a stage where a bad play was being performed. Eliza was sitting on the floral sofa, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief that looked completely dry. Colin was sitting in the armchair, scrolling on his phone. He looked up, his face pale, and quickly shoved the phone into his pocket. "Hunter," Eliza wailed, standing up to hug me. "Oh, it's just awful. Just awful." I let her hug me. Her body felt stiff. She smelled of expensive perfume and gin. I didn't hug her back. I just stood there, arms at my sides, imagining the sound of her voice on the phone while my sister bled out. "The roast is perfect tonight, honey. Tell me what happened," I said, pulling away. I sat on the edge of the coffee table, facing them. I needed to hear the lie. Victor sighed, swirling his scotch. He sat down heavily next to Eliza. "It was animals. Just animals. 3 of them. Masks. Guns. They broke in through the patio doors right around 7. We were just sitting down to dinner." He paused for effect, taking a sip of his drink. "They wanted the safe," Victor continued, shaking his head. "Tessa, she tried to run. She panicked. They started shooting. We hid in the pantry. We couldn't do anything, Hunter. We were helpless." "Helpless," I repeated. I tried to stop the bleeding. Eliza sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "I held her, Hunter. I held her until she was gone. I told her we loved her." My stomach turned. The rage was a physical thing now, a hot coal burning in my throat. "You didn't hold her. You kicked her hand away so you could get to the dessert cart." I heard it. I heard the silverware. "Did she say anything?" I asked, my eyes locked on Victor. Victor didn't blink. "No. It was instant. She didn't suffer." "Liar." "That's good," I lied back. "I'm glad she didn't suffer." The room fell silent. The tension was thick, suffocating. Colin was bouncing his leg nervously. He wouldn't look at me. He kept glancing toward the dining room, as if he was afraid I would look in there. "You must be hungry," Eliza said suddenly, snapping out of her grief. The switch was jarring. "You've been traveling all day? We have leftovers. Roast beef. Potatoes. I can make you a plate." I stared at her. My sister's blood wasn't even dry in the fibers of the floorboards, and she was offering me the leftovers of the meal they ate while watching her die. "No," I said quietly. "I'm not hungry." "You should eat," Victor insisted, picking up a cookie from a silver tray on the table. He took a bite, crumbs falling onto his sweater. "We have to keep our strength up. For Tessa. She's in a better place now, Hunter. We have to believe that." He chewed slowly. I watched his jaw move. I imagined the shovel hitting that jaw. I imagined the sound it would make. "I need to see where it happened," I said, standing up. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. "The police have it taped off," Victor said quickly. "It's a mess, Hunter. You don't want to see that." "I've seen worse," I said. "I'm a SEAL, Victor. I've seen things that would make you vomit." "Show me." I didn't wait for permission. I walked toward the dining room. I heard them scrambling up behind me, but they didn't dare stop me. I stopped at the archway. The dining room was immaculate. The table was polished to a shine. The chairs were pushed in perfectly. But the rug was gone. The police took the rug for evidence. Colin stammered from behind me. I looked at the floorboards. They were scrubbed raw. The finish was stripped off the wood in a large, irregular patch near the head of the table. That was where she fell. I knelt down. I ran my finger over the wood. It was still damp. And there it was, the smell. Chlorine. Bleach. "You cleaned," I said, not looking up. "We had to," Eliza said, her voice high and defensive. "I couldn't look at the stains, Hunter. It was traumatizing. The cleaning crew came this morning." "The police let you clean a crime scene less than 24 hours after a homicide?" I asked, turning to look at them. Victor stepped forward. His face was hard now. The grieving father act was slipping. "Sheriff Dominic is a good friend. He released the scene. He knows we're victims here. Look, Hunter, you're emotional. You're tired. Go to the hotel. Get some sleep. We can discuss the funeral arrangements tomorrow." He was dismissing me. He thought he had won. He thought I was just a dumb soldier who would buy the home invasion story and go cry in a motel room. I stood up slowly. I towered over Victor. He was a tall man, but he was soft. He had money, but he didn't have violence in him. Not real violence. Just the cowardly kind. "You're right," I said. "I am tired." I walked past him, bumping his shoulder hard enough to make him stumble. I stopped at the front door and looked back at them. They were standing together, a united front of deceit. "One more thing," I said. "Tessa called me." Victor froze. The color drained out of his face so fast he looked like a corpse. What? Last week, I lied. She called me last week. Said she was happy. Said you guys were taking good care of her. Visible relief washed over them. Shoulders dropped. Breath escaped. We loved her like a daughter, Eliza said, smiling weakly. I bet you did, I said. I opened the door and walked out into the rain. As soon as the door clicked shut, I let the mask drop. I sprinted to my truck, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. They were lying about everything. The police released the scene? Impossible. Unless the police were in on it. I sat in the truck, gripping the steering wheel. I looked back at the house. Victor was peering through the curtains, watching me leave. He thought he was safe. He thought the sheriff protected him. I put the truck in gear. You want to play games, Victor? I whispered to the rain-streaked windshield. Okay, let's see what Sheriff Dominic has to say when I ask him about the missing rug. I drove away, leaving the house behind. But I wasn't leaving the war. I was just moving the battlefield to the police station. The police station in our town looked the same as when I was 16. The same chipped blue paint. The same flickering neon sign that buzzed like a dying wasp. Only this time, I wasn't walking in as a kid who got into a bar fight. I was walking in as a brother who heard his sister get murdered on the phone. Rain dripped off my jacket as I stepped inside. The officer at the front desk, a bored-looking guy with bad skin and gum in his mouth, barely looked up. Can I help you? Yeah, I said. I need to talk to Sheriff Dominic. He squinted at me. He's in his office. Do you have... He didn't finish because the door to the hallway opened and Dominic himself stepped out. Same buzz cut, same fake friendly smile. Time had only made him fatter. Hunter. Dominic grinned like we were old friends meeting for coffee. I heard you made it back. Man, it's been years. Wish it were under better circumstances, I said flatly. He nodded, pretending to look sad. Yeah, terrible what happened to your sister. Real tragic. We'll find those bastards. His tone told me everything. He wasn't going to find anyone, because he already knew exactly who did it. I want to see the footage, I said. His smile faltered. What footage? The security cameras. The estate's covered in them, and the feed goes straight to your evidence server. Don't tell me you don't have it. He sighed, as if I'd asked for something unreasonable. Hunter, we're still processing things. The footage was corrupted in the break-in. Nothing clear. I'm sorry, man. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I'm going to tell you something, Dominic. When I was in Syria, I learned how to tell when someone's lying. It's in the shoulders. They tense before the mouth does. You're lying. He swallowed. Watch yourself. No, I said, my voice firm. You watch yourself. He stared at me for a moment, then fished in his pocket and pulled out a flash drive. He rolled it between his fingers. Even if I did have something, this isn't evidence you're cleared for. But off the record, he smiled thinly. You SEALs are good with tech, right? He tossed the drive onto the counter. Don't say I gave it to you. He turned and walked away. For a second, I just stared at it. Dominic was crooked, but he wasn't stupid. That drive wasn't a favor. It was bait. That meant whatever was on it, he wanted me to see. Back at my motel, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. The window opened automatically. One single video file. Timestamped the night Tessa died. My pulse thudded in my ears. I hit play. The footage was grainy but clear enough to see the dining room. Tessa sat at the far end of the table, her hands trembling as she picked at her food. Victor sat opposite her, looking calm. Eliza was pouring wine. Colin was scrolling on his phone, laughing at something. Then Victor stood up. He said something, but the sound didn't carry. Tessa started crying. She stood, backing away from the table. Victor raised the gun. Bang. She stumbled, clutching her shoulder. Bang. She fell, still moving, crawling toward the sideboard, her hand reaching for the wall. Victor turned, said something to Eliza. Eliza set down her wine glass, lifted the serving dish, and started slicing more meat. Bang. 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 Tessa's body twitched, rolling onto her back. And then it happened, the part that made my hands tremble. Victor sat down. He picked up his knife and fork. Eliza dabbed at her mouth with a napkin. Colin took a drink of water. The three of them ate. Quietly. calmly. The only movement was the flickering of the chandelier overhead. Tessa's body was still between them and the door. They didn't step around her, they just ate. 5 minutes went by. Eliza stood, dragging the dessert cart into the room. Her heel caught on Tessa's arm. She kicked it aside. Her expression didn't change. It was the most horrifying thing I'd ever seen, and I've seen bodies stacked in streets overseas. There was no panic, no shock, just composure. Then Victor looked up at the camera. He wasn't looking at it by accident. He knew it was there. He smiled and raised his glass. To the family, his lips said. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding so hard the screen rattled. My breathing came out in short bursts. My vision tunneled. They didn't just murder her. They celebrated it. I sat there in the dark motel room, the glow from the streetlight flickering through the blinds, trying to figure out what to do next. I couldn't take this to Dominic. He was part of it. The drive was his way of saying I know you know. He wanted me scared. Instead, it gave me purpose. I picked up my phone and called someone I'd sworn I would never call again. Morgan, an old friend of my sister's husband and their family lawyer before Victor forced her out of the estate. A good person, but quiet. Too scared to fight back. She answered on the second ring. Hunter, where are you? I asked. We need to talk. It's about Tessa. There was a pause on the line, then a shaky breath. I was wondering when you'd come back. I saw the footage. Another pause. Then you already know. You're in danger. They covered it up once. They'll do it again. I don't care about me, I said. I care about proving what they did. You don't prove things with people like the Whitmores, she whispered. You survive them. I'm not planning to survive them. She was silent for a long moment, then sighed. Meet me tomorrow, 9 a.m., corner of Pine and Weller. You'll want to hear what she left behind. She? I asked. Tessa, she said softly. She didn't call me that night, but she did come to see me the day before she died. Left something for you. Before I could ask what it was, she hung up. I sat staring at the dark screen of my phone. My reflection stared back, hollow-eyed, unrecognizable. 11 shots. A dinner. A toast. A cover-up. Now a letter. If Victor thought the funeral ended with a coffin, he had no idea what kind of grave was waiting for him. I shut my laptop and stared at the wall until daylight started to bleed through the blinds. Tomorrow, I wouldn't come looking for answers. I'd come for proof. Morning hit the small town like it always did. Quiet streets, coffee brewing somewhere behind fogged windows, the illusion of peace that only a liar could love. I hadn't slept at all. The video played on repeat in my mind until time stopped meaning anything. 11 shots. A smile. A toast. Every memory of Tessa's laughter overlapped with those images. By the time I pulled up near Pine and Weller, the sky was still gray and heavy. Morgan was already there, sitting inside her silver sedan, parked under a half-dead oak tree. She looked tired, older than I remembered, her blonde hair pulled into a messy knot. The second she saw me, she looked around nervously before unlocking the passenger door. Get in, she said quietly. I slid inside. She had a manila envelope on the dash, sealed and stained at the corners. Her hands were shaking. She told me to give this to you if anything happened, Morgan said, her voice dry, worn thin. I thought she was being dramatic until I saw the news. I kept my eyes on the envelope. What's in it? She said it was insurance. Morgan sighed. But Hunter, you need to understand, what your sister got tangled in wasn't just family drama. It was money. Big money. I figured that out. She kept talking, words speeding up like she'd been holding them in for too long. After Kyle died, the estate passed everything to Tessa, but Victor and Eliza still controlled it. The trust was written in a way that she couldn't access the assets without their signatures. She told me she wanted out, that she was planning to file for full control, meaning she wanted her husband's money, I said slowly. And that didn't sit well with them. She wanted justice, Morgan corrected. They wanted silence. I grabbed the envelope. Inside was a single-page handwritten letter, folded twice. Tessa's handwriting, small, neat, curve-heavy, the same way she used to write grocery lists when we were kids. My stomach twisted. I unfolded it carefully. Hunter, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it out. I've been scared for weeks. They keep saying I owe them, that the money belongs to the family, not me. But I found something Victor's hiding. Real estate transfers, offshore accounts, all under fake company names. Morgan tried to help me, but they threatened her kids. I've copied everything. You'll know where I put it. If I die, don't call the police. Call Hunter and tell him to bring his shovel. The words blurred in front of me. Tell him to bring his shovel. That wasn't a metaphor. That was Tessa's way of saying bury them. The same phrase we used as kids when we stood up for each other. Morgan looked at me, her eyes wet. There's something else. She said you'd understand where she hid the documents. I nodded. I do. Tessa's hiding places had always been symbolic. The last time she'd needed to keep something secret, she buried it under our dad's apple tree in the backyard. I knew where she'd hidden proof this time, too. The one place she still felt safe, the old lake house. Morgan grabbed my arm before I opened the door. Hunter, don't go there alone. If they know what she found, you won't make it out. I survived war zones, I said quietly. A couple of rich sociopaths don't scare me. They should, she whispered. They own everyone here. The sheriff, the lawyers, the bank. Even the funeral home director owes Victor money. I gave her a long look. Then I'll stop pretending this is about law. The lake house was 2 hours north, rotting at the edge of a drained shoreline. It used to be my dad's weekend rebuild project before he got sick. Tessa inherited it after the funeral, though she never had it in her to fix the place up. Half the windows were boarded, the dock half rotten, the paint peeling away like dried skin. It was dead, like everything else Victor touched. I parked in the gravel drive and walked up to the porch. The wind whistled through broken boards, the faint buzz of flies coming from the dark corners. The smell of old dust, dead wood, and stagnant water filled my nose as I stepped inside. The floors creaked under my boots. The old fireplace was stuffed with damp ashes. I scanned the walls. The old family photos were still there. Tessa with Kyle, smiling awkwardly. Me standing behind them in uniform, years younger, proud and stupid. Then I saw it on the side table, her notebook. A plain black leather journal, edges frayed, one page slightly torn. I picked it up and flipped through. Most of it was nonsense, recipes, grocery lists, memories. But then I found it. A page with a single address written 3 times, Eastfield Storage. Unit 107. Ask for the black trunk. Right beside it, drawn in the corner, a small doodle of a shovel. I closed the book and slid it inside my jacket. The air behind me shifted. That quiet instinct every soldier learns. The sense that someone else is breathing your air shot up my spine. I turned fast. A figure stood in the doorway. Gray suit, wet shoes, face worn but sharp. Sheriff Dominic. You've got a bad habit of being places you shouldn't be, he said, stepping inside. I took a slow step back. You sent me that drive, I said. Why? He smiled like it was a secret joke. To see what kind of man you really are? The type who runs to the law, or the type who takes care of things his own way. I'm not much for talking, I said. Clearly. He looked around the place, then leaned against the doorframe. Tessa was a sweet girl. Shame she got greedy. Shame you didn't convince her to stay quiet. The way he said it, the easy tone, the arrogance, told me all I needed to know. Dominic wasn't just protecting Victor. He was getting paid by him. You clean up nice for a grave digger, I muttered. He raised a brow. Grave digger? I took a step closer. I buried people like you overseas. The ones who thought power meant safety. He chuckled softly. This isn't the Middle East, Hunter. You're not some hero here. You're just another broken vet with a story no one will believe. Walk away while you can. He turned and walked out, his boots crunching through the gravel. No threats. No handcuffs. Just that smirk. That was his warning. Stay out, or get buried yourself. But I wasn't walking away. I had proof now. The tape, the letter, the storage address. And every person Victor ever bought off was about to wish they hadn't sold cheap. I sat in the car with the rain starting again, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. They killed her for money, I thought. Fine. Let's see how much it costs to stay alive. I didn't drive straight to the storage unit. Not yet. My gut told me Victor wasn't done cleaning house, and Dominic was his mop. The moment I showed my face there, word would reach Victor. He'd send someone first. That's how men like him worked. Fear first, truth never. So instead of following Tessa's clue, I went straight back into town, parking outside the diner across from the county station. From there, I watched the front door and counted every deputy who walked in and out. 2 uniforms, 1 detective, same rotation every 30 minutes. No change. None of them looked worried. None looked suspicious. That meant Dominic hadn't told them about me. He wanted this private. Good. I wanted the same thing. I waited until the next shift changed before crossing the street. My boots hit the steps, rainwater running off the brim of my ball cap. Inside, the walls were lined with photos. Dominic cutting ribbons, shaking hands with Victor at community charity events. Law and order framed in gold. An older man sat behind the desk. Badge, but no weapon, administrative. Can I help you? He asked. I need to see the sheriff. He hesitated, tapping his pen on the clipboard. He's busy. You can leave a message. He'll see me, I said. My tone carried enough steel to make him swallow his next word. He picked up the phone, muttered something into it, and motioned me through. Dominic's office looked like a courtroom. Oak furniture, shelves full of law books no one read. 2 flags flanking his desk to make him look more official. He didn't stand when I entered. He just flicked ash from his cigarette into a tray and smirked. I gave you a souvenir, he said, leaning back. I assume you watched it. I did. Then you understand the situation. He gestured lazily at the seat in front of him. Sit down before you do something stupid. I didn't move. You hid a murder behind bureaucracy, I said. That tape should be evidence. He shrugged, unaffected. Evidence is what I say it is. Victor pays you? I asked. Or does he just own the whole damn department? His smirk tightened into something cold. Careful, son. I'm not your son. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. You think the Navy taught you how to fight corruption? Out there you had rules, chain of command. Here, all we've got is power. And you don't have any. I took a step closer. I've got enough to ruin you. The video, Tessa's letter, the storage address. His eyes flicked up at that. Just for a second. That was all I needed. You shouldn't have said that out loud, he muttered. I realized he wasn't alone before I saw the movement. 2 officers stepping out from the side door, silent, heavy builds. Deputies. His version of backup. Let me guess, I said, not stepping back. You're going to arrest me for trespassing? Dominic smirked again, interfering with an ongoing investigation. I laughed once low. An investigation you buried? You have 3 seconds to hand over whatever you stole from that house. 2 seconds longer than you deserve, I said. The first deputy grabbed for my arm. I twisted, pivoted, driving my elbow into his midsection. He groaned and dropped to one knee. The second one lunged, but I stepped aside, grabbed the back of his collar, and sent him crashing into the filing cabinet. Papers exploded across the floor like white rain. Dominic stood, gun in hand, fingers steady on the trigger. Stop, he barked. You think you're invincible? You kill a cop, and they'll bury you so deep the sun will forget your name. I lifted my hands, pretending surrender. You won't shoot me. Try me. No, I said softly. You won't shoot because you'd have to explain why your deputies were trying to erase evidence right before your corruption gets exposed. We stared each other down. His finger twitched against the trigger, sweat curling behind his ear. Then he lowered the gun. Slightly. Get out of my town, Hunter, he said, his voice shaking with control. You've got 36 hours before I make your life disappear. Leave, or you'll end up exactly where your sister did, forgotten. I stepped closer until the barrel of his gun pressed against my chest. You think I came for revenge? I whispered. I came for truth. Truth doesn't matter when the story's already written, he said. You're right, I answered. So I'll rewrite it. I turned and walked out, leaving the deputies groaning on the floor, the office door swinging quietly behind me. Outside, the sky was black and red, storm clouds wrapping the town like a warning. For the first time since I'd started this, I knew the scale of the enemy. Victor's money wasn't just buying silence. It owned law enforcement, city records, witnesses. It meant legal justice was dead. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished hoping for justice served clean. If they understood only corruption, then I'd deliver it the same way they did. Quiet, strategic, suffocating. I drove to the storage lot after midnight. Eastfield Storage was a strip of metal doors backdropped by trees and industrial silence. No lights. Only a single lamppost, buzzing with dying fluorescence. The night air felt wrong. Too still, too watched. Unit 107. The lock had been cut. I exhaled slowly, stepped forward, and pushed the door open. The smell hit me first, gasoline and char. Inside, the black trunk was gone, leaving behind only a metallic ash puddle. Someone had gotten here ahead of me. On the wall beside it, a fresh spray paint mark glowed under my flashlight beam. 2 words, too late. I clenched the flashlight, bile rising in my throat. Victor had cleaned it up? Of course he did. He knew about the storage. Dominic had acted like a puppet, stalling me long enough to burn whatever evidence Tessa saved. But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A corner of the burned trunk peeled upward, a fragment of paper under it. I pulled it free, brushing ash away. Not paper. Photo. It was Tessa, pregnant, standing in that same dining room, one hand on her stomach, the other on the chair. My hand shook. Pregnant. They hadn't just shot my sister, they'd killed her unborn child. I remembered the final flash of Victor's face in the video, the cruel calm, the toast. Now I understood why he smiled. It wasn't about money. It was about bloodline. I looked back at the message on the wall, the red words dripping down the metal. Too late. I whispered to the dark. No, Victor, you're too late. Because now it wasn't about theft, or corruption, or even revenge. Now it was war. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even blink. I sat in the truck outside the storage lot, the burned scent still clinging to my clothes, the photo of Tessa's pregnant belly trembling between my fingers. Every memory rewrote itself. Her hesitation when she called me weeks ago, the tremor in her voice when she said she was fine. She wasn't fine. She was scared. She was protecting a child. Victor hadn't just killed my sister. He'd erased an entire future. My future. My bloodline. By dawn, the rain had thinned into a mist, fog crawling low over the asphalt like smoke. I drove back toward town, not to confront anyone, not yet, but to watch. I was done guessing. I wanted to see how fear looked on their faces before I tore their world apart. So I parked down the hill from their mansion and waited. Engine off. I steady. The estate came alive around 8 a.m. Lights flickering on, Eliza stepping out in a bathrobe, her hair perfect even in grief. She moved like nothing had happened, called for Colin, yelled about coffee. Victor came to the doorway behind her. Calm. Composed. The news had reported Tessa's death as a robbery. No charges. No suspicion. It was all theater. And he was directing every second of it. But underneath that calm facade, I could see it. The stiffness in Victor's posture. The way his eyes scanned the driveway. He was nervous. He knew someone was coming for him. He just didn't know how soon. By noon, I was in the woods behind their house. From there I could see everything. Every light that flickered, every window that opened. Using my field binoculars felt like slipping back into another life. A darker one I thought I'd left overseas. I didn't go in. Not yet. I just listened. Watched them move. Studied their patterns. That night, I cut the power. The entire estate went dark in an instant. I heard Eliza's distant scream. The generator sputtered once, then failed. I had sliced the backup line too. For the first time, that house wasn't safe for them. For the first time, they were losing control. When the alarm triggered, I slipped closer, through the trees, until I could see their silhouettes through the windows. Flashlights moved across the rooms, sharp and frantic. Colin's voice, trembling, cracked through the silence. "Dad, what's happening?" Victor's tone was calm, but the edge was there. "Stay quiet. Stay away from the windows." I smiled, because right then, I turned on the speakers. I'd spent the afternoon hacking into their home automation system, the luxury setup Victor had bragged about at parties. Voice recognition, custom audio zones, perfect for ambience. I used it now. I uploaded one single recording. Tessa's voice, 5 seconds long, captured from an old voicemail she had once left me. Her voice whispered through every speaker in the house. "Victor, please, stop." I watched Victor freeze where he stood. Eliza dropped her flashlight. Colin spun around, panicked. The voice repeated, "Please, stop." Eliza started crying. Victor shouted at no one. "Who's doing this?" I did nothing. Just waited until the silence choked them again. That night, 3 deputies arrived. Victor had called Dominic, and they combed the woods. I stayed low, unseen, right under their noses. After an hour, they gave up. They didn't find the cut wires. They didn't find the speakers still half-powered by a portable battery I hid under their porch. Every 30 minutes, the house filled again with that voice. "Victor, please, stop." A ghost designed by justice. The next morning, the panic started showing. Colin didn't leave for work. Eliza refused to sleep in the bedroom, saying she heard the gunshots echoing in the walls. But Victor remained steady, too steady, and that meant something was cracking inside him, even if he didn't want them to see it. I decided to test him. The following night, I took Colin. It wasn't hard. He went running on the trail near the property alone after sunset, AirPods in, oblivious to the world. I grabbed him from behind, dragged him into the woods. He fought weakly, swinging, swearing. I didn't hit back. I just pressed the cold edge of my knife to his throat until he froze. I blindfolded him and pulled him into an abandoned barn I'd scouted earlier. I tied his hands, dropped him on the dirt floor, and waited. He was the first to break. They always are. "Please," he whimpered, his voice shaking. "You don't have to do this. This isn't about you," I said quietly. "This is about what you watched happen and said nothing." "What are you talking about?" "Tessa," I said. "You sat there while your father shot her. You passed the salt." His breath hitched. Then came the denial, the instinct for survival. "I didn't know. He told me he was just trying to scare her. She was leaving with the money. He didn't mean to. You think I wanted this? Was she pregnant?" I asked. Silence. That kind of silence that only the truth can bring. When he finally spoke, it was barely a whisper. He said people like her ruined bloodlines. He said she was going to stain the family name. He said it'd be better if the baby never came. That was the moment I stopped seeing Colin as a witness. He wasn't one. He was a bystander to evil, and that made him part of it. "You recorded him say that," I said, voice low, controlled. "Now." He nodded, trembling. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and held it near his mouth. He confessed everything, voice quivering, every detail spilling out through fear. When he finished, I let the silence linger, the only sound the crickets outside. "Where's the rest of the money?" I asked. He shook his head. "Hidden under the floor in Dad's office. Cash. You won't find it in any account." I stood, pocketing the phone. "If you lie to me, Colin, I'll come back. And I won't ask questions next time." "I'm telling the truth," he whimpered. "Please, let me go." I cut him free, but left the blindfold on. "Walk straight south until you hit the road. Don't turn around." He stumbled out into the night, panting, limbs weak. I waited until the sound of his steps faded before I moved. By morning, Victor's kingdom was chaos. 2 squad cars at his gate. Reporters circling after Colin staggered into town babbling about voices in the woods and a ghost. Dominic tried to calm things down, but even from a distance, I could see the panic spreading. Victor was unraveling, and I wasn't done yet. That night, I set up outside his property again, resting the rifle I hadn't fired since deployment across my knees. I wasn't planning to use it yet. Not unless Victor gave me no choice. Through my scope, I watched him sit alone in his office, drink in hand, staring at something on his desk. He didn't move for minutes. Then he turned the picture frame toward himself, a photo of Tessa at her wedding. He whispered something I couldn't hear. His hand trembled slightly. And that's when I realized Victor wasn't haunted by guilt. He was haunted by losing control. Tessa defied him by dying, by leaving something behind. I knew now why he killed her, because she embarrassed his perfect family name. And that made what I was about to do not vengeance, but balance. I packed my gear and whispered to the night, "Tomorrow, Victor. Tomorrow, the house that ate my sister will choke on its own secrets." The silence swallowed my voice. Only the echo remained. By the next evening, the Whitmore estate looked less like a home and more like a fortress. Victor had called in favors fast, 2 new guards at the gate, SUV headlights sweeping the driveway, motion sensors blinking along the fence. Fear was crawling through the cracks, but he was still pretending to be untouchable. That made him predictable. Men like him always think walls can save them. I parked a mile down the old service road, the same one delivery trucks used before Victor's money built his stone kingdom. I slipped the truck under a tarp of pine branches, grabbed my small pack, and started walking through the trees. I'd mapped everything in my head, blind spots, sound travel, where the cameras were mounted. Years of training abroad, now turned on one target, the man who'd smiled while my sister bled. When I got close enough to see the guardhouse, I crouched behind the roots of a giant oak and waited. One guard paced near the gate, talking into his radio. The other smoked, distracted by his phone screen. Routine makes people lazy. It's always their undoing. I moved quickly, low to the ground. The rain helped mask my steps. I was at the power junction box in seconds. One twist of a screwdriver, and their motion system died quietly. Their precious security cameras went blind. Down by the back fence, I cut through the wire. The compound was silent again, the kind of silence that comes before collapse. I moved past the garden, then slid behind the garage until I could see the house lights flicker through heavy glass. Inside, Victor stood in the dining area, a gun resting on the table beside his half-empty whiskey glass. His face had changed, no more calm control. Now it was just fear hidden behind arrogance. He had reason. I set up along the kitchen wall, pulled the small radio transmitter from my pocket, an old field trick. With it, I looped the house's wireless feed to replay the security footage he'd erased. Himself raising the gun at Tessa, played in silence. Every screen in the house flickered, displaying the same frozen frame. Tessa on the floor. When Eliza saw it first, she screamed. Colin wasn't there anymore after the night before, but she called for him anyway. Habit, panic, denial. Victor looked around, saw his own image broadcast in his private sanctuary, and lost what composure he had left. He fired once at the television, shattering glass. The sound roared across the halls. I stayed just out of sight. I had no interest in shooting him. Not yet. When the guards came rushing in through the back hall, I met them halfway. The first one swung with his flashlight. I caught his wrist, twisted, and drove my elbow into his neck. He collapsed before he could yell. The other reached for his sidearm, but I slammed his head into the wall and dragged him to the floor. No dead bodies, no evidence. Only silence. I bound their wrists with zip ties, gagged them, and left them lying near the shed. They'd wake up later, not sure what hit them. Next came the lights. Every lamp, every chandelier flickered as I cut the main breaker. The house exhaled darkness. Eliza started sobbing. She kept whispering, "It's her. She's still here." Maybe she was. From my spot in the shadows, I watched Victor stumble toward the kitchen, flashlight shaking. He shouted her name, then shouted mine. "Hunter, I know you're out there. You think you can scare me?" I didn't answer. Instead, I played the tape again. This time the audio. "Tessa, sit down." Victor's voice crackled through the speakers, haunting its owner. "You're making a mess of your life." Then bang, bang, bang. "Stop this," Victor yelled, spinning toward the sound. Eliza grabbed his arm. Make it stop, please. Her voice cracked something inside him. He shoved her away hard enough that she hit the wall. She sobbed, sliding down to the floor. I stepped inside then, quiet, deliberate, unseen. My boots left wet prints on the marble. The flashlight beam caught dust swirling through the air between us. He didn't see me yet. I warned you, Victor muttered, more to himself than anyone. I told you to stay away. He fired twice into the shadows. The gunshots were deafening in the polished hall. I slipped behind the dining table, heart rate steady, timing each breath like I had on endless combat nights overseas. He reloaded clumsily, hands slick with sweat, mumbling under his breath. You brought this on yourself. You should have left it alone. Every step he took echoed, but mine were soundless. When he reached the far wall, searching for movement, I kicked the table leg. It tipped forward, knocking over the wine decanter. He spun toward it, pulled the trigger again. The shot never reached me. He was too slow. I hit him from the side, knocking the gun loose. It clattered across the floor. We struggled, chair legs splintering, glass breaking under our boots. He swung a fist that grazed my cheek. I caught his collar, slammed his head against the corner of the table hard enough to make the wood groan. He went down gasping. I didn't finish it. Not yet. This wasn't his grave. It wasn't time. Eliza was on her knees, hands shaking, tears mixing with mascara. Please, she whispered, please don't kill him. Kill? I echoed, standing over Victor. No, Mrs. Whitmore. Killing would be easy. You don't get easy. He crawled backward across the tiles, breathing ragged. The light flickered one last time before fading completely. Only moonlight from the window remained, pale and cold, cutting through the room like a blade. Get up, I said quietly. He staggered, clutching the table for balance. You want me to confess? Fine. Fine. I did it. You hear me? I shot her. She was ungrateful. She was going to take everything we built, everything I worked for. She was my sister, I said. The words came low, empty, like a verdict. He sneered. Then you should have taught her respect. That one line burned hotter than any bullet ever could. I stepped closer, my hand wrapping around his jaw. He tried to pull away, but there was nowhere left to run. I leaned in until our eyes met. You want to talk about respect? I said. You'll give her what she never got, a voice. I shoved him into a chair, ripped my phone from my pocket, turned on the recording app, start talking. He glared up at me, lip bleeding. About what? The truth. Outside, thunder rolled low across the valley, the kind of thunder that announces burial weather. When he didn't speak, I grabbed the gun off the floor, checked the chamber, and set it on the table in front of him. Talk, or you get to meet your own dinner table again, this time from underneath. He swallowed, the reality of it sinking in. His eyes flicked toward Eliza, then back to the gun. And then he started talking. Names, bribes, figures, everything. Every piece of the rot he'd built around this town. I let the phone roll until the battery warning blinked red. Then I pocketed it. You're done, I said. Everything you built rots tonight. Victor exhaled, a long, trembling sound. What are you going to do with me? I met his eyes. Bury you. He laughed, short, bitter. You don't scare me. Good, I said, stepping into the doorway. Fears for the living. And then I was gone, slipping back into the storm while the first sirens started wailing in the distance. Called, no doubt, by Eliza. They'd find him still sitting there. Bruised. Humiliated. Recorded. But by the time they did, I'd already dug the hole waiting for him. The storm had swallowed the town by the time I reached the construction site at the back of Victor's estate. It was the same patch of land he planned to turn into high-end condos, his future empire, perfect for what I needed. I spent 2 hours digging. Every shovel strike came with a memory. Tessa's laughter on the porch, her crying at the wake, the sound of those damned forks against the plates. The hole took shape slow and deep as every reason I had left to breathe. By the time I finished, the water had risen ankle-high inside it, filthy and cold. I looked down at the trench, an open mouth in the earth, waiting. The shovel felt heavy in my hands, but the weight didn't tire me anymore. It steadied me. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. It's over. You have what you came for. Don't cross the line. No name, but I didn't need one. Sheriff Dominic. His last warning. He didn't understand. It wasn't just a line I was crossing. That line had been erased the night Tessa called me. I slid the phone away and checked the time. Midnight. One last dinner before dawn. By the time I came back to the house, the sirens had stopped. The police had come and gone, checking the estate with questions that never mattered. I knew Dominic had called them off fast. He didn't want noise. He wanted silence around Victor, like always. But inside, the quiet was wrong. The air felt heavy, stale, the kind that clings before a storm inside walls. I stepped through the unlocked back door. Every lamp was still dead, the house humming with generator fumes. The dining room, the same table from the tape, stood perfectly reset. Plates, wine bottles, even candles flickering in polished holders. But this dinner wasn't for guests. It was set for two. Victor sat at the head of the table, face rigid, eyes bloodshot. Across from him, the chair was empty, but the plate was full. Roast beef, potatoes, a single glass of red wine untouched. The power flickered once, long enough for him to notice the shadow in the doorway. "You came back," he said quietly, voice stripped of all that expensive confidence. "You invited me," I replied, stepping closer. "Or maybe this table did." He looked at the shovel in my hand, the mud on my boots, and understood enough. "You don't have to do this," he said. "You got the tape. You got proof. Proof doesn't feed dead people." He laughed, a hollow, choking sound. "If you kill me, what difference does it make? You think that changes what happened? She's still gone." My jaw tightened. "No, but it makes sure you join her the right way. Hungry, in the dark, under dirt." "You're insane," he hissed. "Probably." I pulled out my phone and hit play. His own confession filled the room, his voice echoing off the walls. Every bribe, every order, every truth he'd spilled hours ago. He tried to speak, but I raised my hand to quiet him. "Listen," I said. "That's the sound of your empire falling apart. Every file, every message, it's already backed up and on its way to every newsroom in this state." He leaned back, pale, trembling. "Why even come back then?" I stepped around the table, slow, controlled. "Because they'll take your freedom, but I'll take your peace." He reached for the gun in his waistband. I kicked the chair out from under him, sending him crashing backward. The gun skittered across the floor toward the window. He scrambled for it, slipped in the mud my boots tracked in, cursed. "Victor," I said softly, "you fired 11 shots into a woman who trusted you. You sat down and chewed while she was dying at your feet. Tonight, you're not dying fast." He froze at the sound of my voice, the way calm replaced anger in it. "What are you going to do?" His voice broke. "Shoot me? Beat me?" "No," I said. "You don't deserve that kind of mercy." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a small GPS tracker, the same kind we used overseas for extractions. I dropped it into his pocket. "This way, they'll find you eventually." "Find me where?" I didn't answer. I forced him onto his feet, dragged him by his collar through the hall, past every portrait on those expensive walls, his false legacies staring down at him. Eliza was gone. The guards were gone. It was just him and me now, two men walking down a hallway that wouldn't exist by morning. Outside, the rain hit like bullets. Thunder rolled low over the field. He saw the hole before we reached it. "No," he breathed, stumbling. "Please, Hunter, listen to me. I'll turn myself in. I'll confess again. I'll testify." "You already did," I said. "It's on record." "That was your voice." I shoved him forward, mud splattering across his legs. He fell hard, hands sinking into the muck. The smell of wet earth filled the air, sweet, damp, and cruel. "Get in," I said. He looked up, shaking his head. "She begged me to stop," he muttered, almost to himself. "You don't understand, she was going to ruin us." "She begged you to stop," I repeated. "That's exactly the part you'll remember." I pressed the heel of my boot between his shoulders and pushed. He slid into the pit like a man losing ground to his own ghosts. The rain poured faster now, drumming against the earth, filling the edges of the hole. He clawed at the sides, but couldn't climb out. I stared down at him. You feel that mud getting heavier? That's what silence feels like when it finally answers back. He screamed something. Ugly words, broken curses, but the thunder drowned him out. I shoveled the first mound of dirt in. Then another. And another. Slow. Measured. The same pace he took when he reloaded, when he aimed, when he ate. He kept shouting until the sound became muffled. Then it turned to gasps. Then it stopped. I didn't look away. The storm washed the rest back into the earth, the last evidence of a man who thought his family name could buy eternity. I left the shovel standing upright in the mud, like a gravestone with no name. When I got back to the house, dawn was bleeding through the clouds. I hung my jacket over the chair, sat down at the same table he'd set, and poured myself a glass of that untouched wine. The house was silent again, the kind of silence that only happens when something evil is finally gone. I looked at the empty chair across from me and whispered, "Dinner's over, Tess." The storm outside kept moving east. I let it take everything with it. By the time sunlight cracked through the clouds, the rain had slowed into a mist that hung like smoke over everything. The hole was gone, filled and level, rainwater smoothing it until it looked like the ground had never been disturbed. The shovel was gone too. I left it there, buried with him. The earth could keep its secrets. I drove away before the morning patrols circled back. The road was slick, silent, and endless. The weight that had crushed my chest for days didn't lift, it settled. Revenge didn't heal anything. It just replaced one kind of silence with another. But at least now, when the quiet came, I could breathe inside it. I stopped by the hill that overlooked Tessa's grave, tucked behind the old church. The morning fog was thick, the stone damp and dark. Her headstone was simple, the way she would have wanted it. White marble, no inscription about tragedy or loss. Just her name, the years, and the small engraving of an anchor at the corner. It made sense. She'd always said anchors reminded her of me, of safety. I crouched there, the mud soaking into my jeans, and laid the folded photo I found in the burned storage unit against the stone. Tessa smiling, one hand over her stomach. She looked so alive that for a moment I expected her voice to spill out of the wind. "I did what you asked," I said quietly. "They can't hurt anybody anymore." The wind moved the grass, cold and soft, brushing like a whisper around my ears. I sat there until my hands stopped shaking. The sun climbed higher, gold light scraping the gray away. The world had the nerve to keep going. I felt something pressed beneath the stone, a small brass box I hadn't noticed before. I pried it open. Inside was an old USB stick, sealed in plastic. Label written in her hand. "For Hunter, last words." My throat burned. She must have hidden it before she died, knowing I'd come here someday. In the truck, I plugged it into my laptop. The file opened with a click. Her voice filled the small cab, soft, calm, recorded days before everything ended. "If you found this, Hunter, I guess you did what you always do. You showed up too late, but saved the day anyway. Don't blame yourself. I stayed because I thought I could change them. I was wrong. But you always knew where the line was. You just hated crossing it. Promise me something. When it's done, don't stay buried with me. Don't let my death be the end of you. You were always more than the pain, Hunter." I swallowed hard, pressing a hand over my mouth. Her voice faded under the patter of rain against the windshield, and for the first time since it all started, I cried like a man who'd finally run out of battles. It took less than 3 days for the rest to collapse. Victor's confession, recorded and backed up, hit every station by Tuesday morning. His company froze overnight. Bank accounts, property ties, criminal investigations, years of secrets boiled to the surface. Sheriff Dominic pretended ignorance, but state investigators tore through his files and found half a lifetime of payoffs. By Wednesday, The local news reported several bodies found near the Whitmore estate, an excavation site left unregistered for months. They said nothing about how deep that hole went or who dug it. They never found his body. Why would they? The shovel was good camouflage. Eliza was arrested that night. Fraud, obstruction, conspiracy. Her mugshot was everywhere the next morning. For the first time, she looked human. No makeup, no pearls, just empty eyes staring inward at guilt she'd never faced properly. The entire town scrubbed their history overnight. Their businesses, charities, photos, all disappeared as if by burning themselves down. They could erase what long rotted. But people talk, and truth survives faster than rumor when pain feeds it. I stayed off the grid, sleeping in the old lake house, living on coffee and cheap food. Some nights, I dreamed I heard knocking from under the earth. Other nights, I heard Tessa's voice again, never pleading, just quiet, almost proud. You finished it. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was peace. When everything started fading from the headlines, I knew it was time to end it properly. Not with blood, with closure. 2 weeks later, I walked into the courthouse. Reporters filled the steps outside, yelling questions about the case. Who leaked the files? Who the mystery witness was? Who turned on Victor first? I said nothing. Inside, the courtroom smelled of old paper and stale air. Judge Reynolds, a name I remembered from my father's days as a state worker, looked weary but sharp. They had Eliza in front of him, orange jumpsuit, cuffs on her wrists. She didn't look up until my boots echoed across the floor. When she did, something in her face cracked. I saw recognition and fear, followed by a flicker of something else that almost looked like sorrow. You, she whispered. You sent all this to the press. I nodded once. She deserved truth. Her chin trembled. You'll ruin generations of work. Good, I said. You built it on her grave. The judge banged his gavel, calling for order. Before they led her away, she turned back one last time. She begged you to forgive me, she said. Did you ever hear that part? Her words hit like a quiet shot. Maybe it was true. Maybe it wasn't. But I didn't answer. Some forgiveness doesn't belong to the living. When she was gone, the courtroom emptied fast, chatter chasing news. A junior journalist approached me outside, notebook trembling in her hands. Are you her brother? She asked. Was, I said. Now I'm just a man who buried a secret. She frowned, confused, but I walked away before she could ask more. That night, I went back to the estate one last time. The property was surrounded by yellow tape and half-demolished walls. The dining table was gone, the windows shattered, the chandelier hanging by one weak thread. Rain had found its way in again, streaking mud across the bare floors. I stepped over the broken threshold and stood where she'd fallen. The place was silent, not empty, just final. I looked out the window. The field beyond was still wet, but the trench was gone now. Construction crews had flattened everything for the investigation. They'd never find what mattered most. That wasn't just a grave. It was memory's last guard post. I turned off the light, locked the door from the inside, and whispered into the growing night. She was right, Tess. I did cross the line, but I built something there. Outside, the rain started again. Not angry, cleansing. As I walked down the long driveway, the last of the estate behind me, I checked my phone. The news headlines had changed again. War, politics, celebrities. The world moved on, just like she told me to. But somewhere between each heartbeat, I swore I still heard her voice whisper through the storm. Don't stay buried with me, Hunter. And for the first time since that night, I knew I wouldn't. I drove deep into the hills that night, following the same road that led away from the Whitmore house. The rain had stopped, but the air was still wet, the kind of heavy quiet that always follows storms. I knew I shouldn't come back. Not here, not again. But justice has a strange pull when you owe it a final word. The mud was still soft where the machines had churned up the ground. The tape was gone now. The news crews vanished. The sheriff's office closed off everything as under review. They didn't look for Victor anymore. They just filed it as presumed deceased. The world moved on, exactly the way evil wanted it to. But not me. I needed to make sure the silence I left behind never loosened its grip. I walked to the edge of what was once his garden, the old rose bushes half buried in the soil. The rainwater had filled low spots, turning puddles into mirrors that reflected the gray sky. I found the line of slightly sunken earth where I knew the ground had been broken before. I crouched down, pressed my hand flat to the soil. It was cold, firm, unmoving. Whatever noise haunted me wasn't from beneath, it was from inside. I stayed like that for a long time, staring at the dirt, whispering the same words over and over. Stay gone. The wind picked up, carrying the faint creak of loose boards from the construction scaffolds nearby. It almost sounded like breathing. I stood up, brushed the mud from my palms, and fought the creeping thought that maybe part of him still lingered under there, some ugly piece of the man that refused to die properly. No one deserves to rest easy after what he did. But even monsters buried long enough turn into dust. I wasn't here to relive it. I was here to mark the ending. The sound of a car pulling up behind me cut through the quiet. I turned just enough to see the headlights flash across the trees before the engine shut off. Morgan stepped out, coat drawn tight against the chill, her breath fogging in the air. I hadn't seen her since the day she gave me Tessa's letter. You shouldn't be here, I said. I could say the same to you, she replied, walking toward me carefully. I heard the investigation's being closed. They ruled it homicide, pinned it on Victor's disappearance. That's good enough for the papers. You left a war zone in that house, Hunter. People talk about you like a ghost. She looked at me, eyes tired but kind. What now? I bury what's left. Her gaze shifted to the patch of earth beside us. You already did. No, I said quietly. I buried him. Not her. Morgan took something out of her coat pocket, a small velvet box. She opened it and showed me what was inside. Tessa's wedding ring. Tarnished, edges scratched, but still hers. They recovered it from evidence, she said. I thought you should have it. I took it and stared at it for a long time. The last thing she wore in life. The proof that love had once existed in a house full of hate. I slipped it into my pocket, the small circle of gold warm against my hand. You know, Morgan said after a pause, not everything you did will stay hidden forever. When they dig deeper, they won't, I said. They don't dig where I dig. She looked at me then, and for a second, I saw the reflection of who I had been before all of this, someone who believed saving people meant everything. But that man was gone, buried somewhere under this same ground. You know she'd want you to let it go, Morgan whispered. I know, I said, but sometimes letting go means keeping quiet. She nodded, understanding more than she said. She turned to leave, then stopped halfway. You're not a bad man, Hunter. You just lost track of the difference between justice and peace. I found it, I said. They ended up in the same grave. When she drove off, I stayed there until the sound of her engine faded into the hills. The night sank back into stillness. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called, long and low, carried by the wind. I looked back at the ground one last time. I opened my fist and dropped the ring into the dirt. The moonlight caught the gold before it disappeared beneath my boot. One last symbol. One last marking for Tessa's memory and the life that never took a breath. This was her grave now, not his. Rest easy, I said quietly. You've earned it. I turned and walked away, step by step into the open road. The hill grew smaller behind me until it vanished in the dark. The mud dried on my boots, the wind colder with every mile. Maybe one day I'd drive far enough to forget how soft the earth felt under my hands that night. Maybe I wouldn't. Either way, this was how the story was supposed to end. Not with a headline, not with another body, but with the ground finally still. And for the first time, silence didn't sound like regret. Morning came slow, like even the sun didn't want to touch what the night had buried. The sky hung low over Oregon's hills, pale and silent, the kind of dawn where every noise feels like memory. I parked at the diner on the outskirts of town, same one Tessa and I used to go to when we were younger, before either of us knew what loss really meant. The waitress recognized me instantly, but didn't say anything. She just poured black coffee and slid a plate of eggs across the counter. The smell of bacon, toast, and rain-soaked earth filled the air. It was the first time I'd eaten sitting down since that night. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Almost. Across from me sat the empty seat. Her seat. The one she always took by the window. The ghost of her laughter lived somewhere in that sunlight hitting the glass. I stared at it and smiled, just once. They say revenge doesn't bring peace. They're right. It doesn't. Peace doesn't come from blood. It comes from silence. From knowing the people who destroyed what you loved can never hurt anything again. The doorbell jingled behind me. Sheriff Dominic walked by outside. In cuffs this time. 2 state investigators leading him to the black SUV waiting by the curb. His head was down. His empire was gone. His silence finally broken. For the first time since Tessa's call, I could breathe without the sound of her screams echoing in the back of my mind. The waitress returned, timid. "Rough week?" she asked softly. "You could say that," I said. "But it's over now." She nodded and walked away, leaving the check beside my plate. I tucked a few bills under it, stood, and looked one last time at the empty seat. That was our last breakfast together, me and the ghost of a promise. Outside, the road glimmered under the morning light. The fog was lifting. I pulled on my jacket and whispered to the wind, "You can rest now, Tess. You're free." I drove west, toward the coast. No more graves. No more war. Just the sound of tires on wet pavement and the endless horizon waiting ahead. Somewhere, eventually, peace was waiting too. Before I reached the highway, I looked once more in the rearview mirror, the diner fading behind me, the mountain mist curling like smoke. And for the first time, I didn't see blood. I just saw the edges of a sunrise. And that, my friends, was Tessa's story. A story of family, betrayal, and a brother who gave up everything for truth. But let me ask you this. What would you have done if you got that call in the middle of the night? Would you forgive, or would you bury the truth like Hunter did? Tell me in the comments.